Okay, starting a new book, which is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien. Actually, this is not a completely new book to me. I actually read this once before, way back in 5th grade, so this is actually a reread. I'm just going to give some background briefly on my history with this book before I get into the reasons why I've chosen to reread it. As a child, I was a huge fan of the Don Bluth movie, The Secret of NIMH. And I still am to a large extent. I've rewatched it recently as an adult, and I think this movie does not get enough praise. I think this is Don Bluth's finest movie, possibly the only masterpiece he ever did, or he and his studio. And I don't think it gets enough praise as it deserves, but actually I don't want to talk too much about the movie in this video, because if I talk about the movie then I'm never going to stop. So I'll just leave it at that. Maybe I'll make another video at some time in the future where I go more in depth into the movie. But anyways, I was already very familiar with the movie before I ever read the book. I had seen the movie multiple times. You know, when you're kids, you watch and rewatch movies quite often. So I had the movie practically memorized by the time I was in 5th grade. And then when I was in 5th grade, our teacher had us read the book together as a class. So if memory serves, we each had our own copy of the book. And then she would read out a chapter and we would follow along in our book. There may have been times where we were assigned to read some of it ourselves and then we would read some of it together. I don't remember clearly, to be honest, but point being, we read this book together as a class when I was in 5th grade. Now, when this book was first handed out to us, I was a little bit skeptical of it. And I was skeptical because I was so in love with the movie. And even though, you know, people say the book is always better than the movie, I maintain, my personal theory is that you hold affection for whichever medium you first encountered the story first in. So, you know, if you first saw the movie and you fell in love with the movie, then it's almost hard for the book to replace that. And vice versa. If you first read it as a book and fell in love with the book, then the movie is bound to disappoint. But because I had been so in love with the movie, I thought, okay, this is going to be the same story I already know, except maybe there'll be some changes, and I'm resistant to changes from the story I already know. I mean, I know it was a movie that changed things rather than vice versa, but from my perspective, even though the book was the original, it was going to be a change. And I also thought, you know, because it's a book, it's going to be long and boring, and I already know all the exciting parts in the movie anyways. And just maybe all those prejudices you have as a kid, where you're convinced that the movie is better, and you don't really want to waste your time with the book. But then I discovered, as I think most people do, that once we got into the book, I found it absolutely fascinating. The whole story of the Rats of NIMH is told in much more detail in the book. The conflicts between the factions of the Rats of NIMH and, you know, the various politics behind that is much more complex in the book than it is in the movie. And I found myself, as we went along, becoming absolutely fascinated by the book. I say as we went along because it does get off to a bit of a slow start. But I think once you get into it, you get hooked. I'm somewhat going off of memory here. Now, I'm totally going off of memory here because I've not picked up the book since I was in 5th grade. I've rewatched the movie in the years since, but I've not picked up the book again. I'm picking it up now because I'm trying to use it in my own class. So I teach English as a foreign language here in Vietnam. I've recently been assigned a high-level teenager class, and I've not taught a high-level teenager class for about 5 years, at least not as a permanent class. Not since the days I was in Cambodia. And when I was in Cambodia, there was an extensive reading in the high-level Smart Teens program. Sorry, they didn't call them Smart Teens, but the high-level Teens program in Cambodia, where each class would be assigned a book and we would read the book together. I was thinking about trying to duplicate that now that I'm teaching a high-level teenage class again. And just while I was thinking of possible books I could do, this popped up in my mind because it was something that I had done myself as a 5th grader. Now the kids I'm teaching now are older than 5th grade. They're in high school. But then they're studying English as a foreign language. So I was thinking that the gap would even out because, the Rats of NIMH is frequently assigned to lower age groups in the US. I was thinking maybe I could use it for a higher age group, which was studying English as a foreign language in Vietnam. We will see how this works out. I mentioned before this was quite common at the old school I used to work at in Cambodia. And they did use a number of books with the high-level teens class. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, Animal Farm by George Orwell, Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. What other books? Lord of the Flies, I think, if memory serves. And to be perfectly honest, the success of that program was very mixed. Even though these were books that were traditionally aimed at teenagers back home in the US, in Cambodia, even though they were what would be classified as high level at our school, they struggled with it. And so I'm not sure how much success this is going to have in my high level teens class now. But I want to give it a try because even when I was in Cambodia, even if the book was a struggle for them, it very often got a very positive reaction out of the students anyways. I remember The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton as a book that even though they struggled with a lot of the vocab, they really enjoyed for the most part. So I'm hoping that, I don't know, we'll see how this goes. I've already done chapter 1 today in class with this new high-level teenage class I've got. And it'll be interesting to see their reaction with it tomorrow. I think they could understand most of it. There's a surprising amount of advanced vocabulary right from the beginning in chapter 1. A lot of agricultural terms and terms about the forest, talking about like a sward of grass, which my English as a second language students are going to have no clue what that means. But I'm going to try and train them to just ignore the unknown vocabulary or try and guess it by context, which is one of the reading skills we try and teach anyways. Anyways, we got through the first chapter today, and aside from a lot of the unknown vocabulary, the first chapter really does start out slow, and kind of looking ahead through the book, I think it is a bit of a slow burn. Once you get into the whole backstory behind the Rats of NIMH, that's when the book really starts to get fascinating. But I think up until then, the first, 10, 11, 12 chapters before Mrs. Frisby meets the Rats of NIMH or finds out about their society are going to be a little bit slow, and we'll see how well the patience of the class holds out. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, this may be of interest to some people, where I obtained a copy of this from. So I had this idea in mind that Miss Frisby and the Rats of NIMH would be a fun book to do. I was searching for it online, trying to find a PDF that somebody had uploaded, whether legally or illegally. I wasn't picky, just some copy online. And I found a bunch of dodgy websites that I wasn't sure whether they contained viruses or not. You know the way this usually is. But then I stumbled actually across a copy on a website called ESL Bits, which actually, once I stumbled across it, I recognized it because a colleague had recommended this site to me about a year or so ago as something he often uses with his students to do extensive reading. I think it's done by a guy in Australia. He's got tons of books on this website. He's got the books and audio files. So you can do it as an audio book, you can do it as reading, or you can do it as a read and listen. It seems like it's very professionally done, and it looks like it may be associated with a university. I forget which university. University of Adelaide, maybe. All that, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, though, these books are up there legally. Although once you get into international copyright law, things get a little bit more complex, isn't it? But it's an incredibly useful site, and I'll leave a link down below to where the Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH section is. It does say that the book has been adjusted for ESL students. Looking over it, it doesn't look like it's been adjusted much. It's still got a very, a lot of vocabulary that's going to be a struggle for ESL students. So I don't know. It might not be a 100% authentic, real thing, or it might be. I don't know. But this is a copy I'm going to be using in my class, and should we manage to get to the end of it, and again, we'll see how this goes. I mean, if the students end up hating it, I'm not going to push on with it. But should we manage to get to the end of it, then I'll come back and I'll do a review of it at the end. This will be a reread review because I did already read it once when I was in 5th grade. But be interesting to see what my thoughts are on it. Ugh. Sorry. Something's slipping off in the corner here. Interesting to see what my thoughts are on it after I've reread it. Will it be as good as I remember it? Will I pick up on, will it be better than I remember it? Will I pick up on things that I didn't catch the first time or don't remember from all those years ago? We'll see. I'll do some sort of follow-up video regardless. I mean, if I end up not finishing it because the students really hate it, then I'll do a didn't finish video. Either way, I guess just watch this space, and at some point I'll be making another video on this book.